Now on part 4, we're looking at the Pew Research and are the rich getting richer and the poor getting rich, or poor getting poorer, the wealth gap basically. One of the things that I want to highlight in this video is how studies are conducted. Now there are a couple of things here to note. Very few, if any, studies will be accurate because they typically look at snapshots. Things like Pew. We'll see another example using a Bankrate study in a second. They also assume that they know more than the people that they're interviewing, which is a big problem with a lot of studies. Remember, if you're an academic and you have a PhD, you tend to think you're smarter than the people that you're interviewing or studying. I don't make that assumption. So one of the reasons why I've advised companies do not hire people who are highly academic. Their research is generally wrong because they come from this point of view that they know everything. That's not a good researcher. Okay? You have to come from the point of view that you may not know as much as the people that you're studying. Also, remember, negative media get more attention. I mean, think about it. Very few people will share this video because it's more positive than the articles that it highlights that are both from the Wall Street Journal and Zero Hedge, which are more negative. Why? Think about it, okay? Negative media get more attention. Do journalists have any interest in getting the full story if it means that the story is less negative? By the way, this is a blog from Richard Bradley. He highlights some problems in media that involve fact-checking, getting the other side. A really disturbing article that he wrote had to do with Nicholas Kristof. Just how and I do not respect Nicholas at all, but how he used all this manipulative language to make you feel sorry for this person who, had a hard background, but actually kind of walked around facts and hid facts and didn't really dig deep and didn't get other sides to stories. Well, interesting. I mean, very disturbing article. These are not good articles, but you're seeing them all over the media. Anytime you see in the media, poor this person, they're a victim, you should immediately be skeptical. Someone's trying to manipulate you more often than not. In studies, assuming you know more or leaving out important demographic information is also a major problem. I mean, think about the Pew study. Where's age at? Why did they leave that demographic fact out? Starts to become pretty clear. Maybe it's because when we look at the Federal Reserve data, maybe age explains a lot of it, right? You don't always know more than the people that you're interviewing. And as we'll see in a second, that's a problem with another study that we're going to highlight. Okay, and that I'm going to look at. So let's look at this one right here. This is a Bankrate study. First, this is from, it's actually not a Bankrate study, I'm sorry. It's from Princeton. If you scroll down, you can see Princeton Survey Research Associates International, which obtained the data via telephone interviews. One of the big problems in research, I've said this before, is open-ended questions, but we'll look at this. In the article, it says, still, that budget may be surprisingly brittle. If someone encounters a significant unexpected expense, I have to credit Clace Bell, who wrote this article. This is good. We'll see in a second. Problem here, unexpected expense outside his or her budget, such as an emergency room visit or a car repair. Only 38% of respondents said they could cover it with cash they have on hand in a savings or checking account. Is this true? Let's look at the question that was asked. How do you tend to deal with unexpected expenses such as $1,000 for an emergency room visit or $500 car repair? Now, if you have $1,000 in savings or more than $1,000 in savings, ask yourself how would you tend to deal with it. I know how I would. I have more than $1,000, and I'll tell you in a second. But ask yourself that. You can pause this video and think about it. Okay? Because this is the question attached, I would assume this is the question that they asked on the study. If they asked a different question, I don't know why they didn't include it. And you can read the article if you want. Here's the URL. All right, so 38% said they would pay the cost from savings. I want to point out that I would not have answered this question that way. Wait, but you, and y'all know, you're like, wait, but you just said you had $1,000, more than $1,000. Well, yes, but I still wouldn't do this. Because I don't draw from savings, right? If you draw from savings all the time, you won't have any. That's all there is to it. So that's not the rational way to do it. The next one is how I would handle it. Reduce spending on other things. That's the better thing to do. That's a good financial habit. If I have an extra cost this month, then I need to offset that by sacrificing this month. That way I don't. You're not going to build savings, you're not going to build wealth by always drawing from it. Now, some of you are starting to see the problem with this study, right? Wait, but Clace Bell wrote that only 38% of respondents said they could cover it with cash they have on hand in a savings or checking account. But that's not true. Because this could be people like me. And there are people like this, by the way. Again, I worked at a bank for more than 5 years, and there were people that this is how they behaved. In fact, I noticed that wealthy people and upper middle class people, for lack of a better word, they tended to do it this way too. That's a problem because they're making assumptions. This is generally how lower middle class people and middle class people think. They just use their savings. They don't try to cut back. Actually, there's one that's not included on this that I would also include, which is get a second job. I mean, if it's a really big unexpected expense, like $1,000, get a second job. Go out and work a weekend. Mow lawns or something. That's actually even better, right? These people, 16% said borrow money from family or friends. I assume these people don't have the money in savings because that sounds to me like fraud if they do. And then, of course, we have use credit cards. I did know wealthy people who would use credit cards because they had 0% APR. I think that's a bad behavior, and again, they probably, or not probably, usually they did end up facing problems because they were getting into bad financial behavior. But I think this is the most rational of these four. This, by the way, is something else, and don't know, refuse to answer. I would eliminate these from the studies just because you're not getting any data from them. But the 26% that said reduce spending on other things, it's more rational. The most preferred thing is to work a second job or to increase work for that month so that you can increase income and offset it that way. Okay, that's mine. This was my second preferred. I wouldn't do this at all. Okay, now this was the article. Like I said, I do agree. I do think that Clay Spell, at least in this writing, saying a significant unexpected expense. I don't know if I would say significant, but $1,000 is not what we're about to read from somebody else, or $500 car repair. Those aren't small expenses. A $20 oil change might be pretty small, but these are bigger than normal. Now, let's see what Zero Hedge wrote about this study. In fact, only 38% of respondents said that they have enough funds in their bank accounts to cover even the most mundane, what? Most mundane? Those aren't most mundane, of spending emergencies. Most others would need to take out debt or cut back elsewhere. Well, that's actually not, again, we've already proven that that's not what that study proved. See, the problem with open-ended questions is if you're afraid to hear the word no, I'm not afraid to hear the word no, but most people are, then you're saying, do you have enough money to cover $1,000? You would get the answer to that question. But by asking an open-ended question here, how would you deal with that? Well, now you don't know. So stop being passive-aggressive in your research and actually get the facts. It's a problem with these studies. And again, it wasn't done by Clay Spell, it was done by the Princeton group. Okay, so clearly more than half of Americans not only cannot budget more than a few months down the road. Whoa, 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 whoa! Where are you getting that from, Zero Hedge? I mean, you talk about making all kinds of assumptions. Again, reducing spending is the more rational thing to do, but is living paycheck to paycheck hardly a surprise? So, definitely not the most mundane. That's fraud. I mean, you can tell there's a lot of passion in this, but it's very non-factual. It's just bad research. Very bad research. It's a terrible question. Doesn't prove anything. I mean, I guess you could say that this question proves fundamentally how people would tend to deal with unexpected expenses. So I guess in a way, it's not bad research so much as it's definitely not proving what people are trying to twist it to make it prove, right? Now let's look at the Wall Street Journal. More than 3 in 5 Americans wouldn't have money in their savings account to pay. Whoa, 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 whoa. That's not what it proves either. Wow. A person at the Wall Street Journal can't come to the right conclusion based on the study. This is not what the study found. This person gets paid to write this. Bad research. Do you see why I want you to not read the news or why I want you to avoid the media? They're not even looking at numbers right. Like, I'm sitting here looking at this like, what study are y'all reading? Because this is not what the study found. Now, they linked this. So this is what it looks like, at least if they were getting it from somewhere else. I'd love to see it. But this is what they're linking. Okay? Now, I am going to flame Clay Spell here because one of the manipulative ways to sell products. I have nothing against sales. Sales is great. I'm a big advocate of sales. You should learn how to sell. Problem with some sales people is that they create a crisis that's invented. Like, Americans aren't saving enough, as we saw up here, right? I mean, what was the statement made? Only 38% of respondents said they could cover it with cash they have on hand in a savings. Wrong! The study did not find that. But there's the crisis. They don't have enough money in savings. So what do you think Clace Bell does for a living? A CFA. Well, what do you know? Suddenly start to make more sense. So you invent a crisis that doesn't actually exist. Again, this is the more rational thing to do of the options. I don't know if they were presented with this, but I think working another job would be more rational the most. But hey, that's my take, right? But the thing is that you create a crisis that didn't exist in the first place, and then you say, look, this is why you need to budget. And look, I wrote this wonderful book about budgeting. Clace Bell I don't think has, but the point is, a CFA, there's a sell there, right? Now look, selling isn't bad. I sell hyperinflation insurance. But I don't go around saying, oh my God, there's going to be hyperinflation insurance next week, right? There isn't. Hyperinflation probably won't happen in your lifetime. It's actually a very rare event. So people are like, wait, that's the worst sales in the world. You're basically saying it's unlikely. Right. The people that I do business with that hire me for hyperinflation insurance, the reason why they hire me is they don't want to worry about it ever. Okay? Even if it is a low probability event, that's who I do business with. I don't want to do business with people who are emotional and afraid and scared because they're going to resent me in the long run and they're going to think I exploited them. I don't want emotional customers. I want someone who's like, rationally speaking, I want to never worry about this. I'm going to hire you. Okay? There's nothing wrong with sales. Sales is good. Sales is wonderful. But don't lie when you sell. And don't twist data to sell. It's manipulative. Okay? Number one, here's what I've learned in research so far in 10 years of doing it, and doing it on my own, and not under academic institutions who are usually self-righteous. Good studies don't assume they know more than those they research, right? If I make an assumption that I know more than the people when I ask this question, it starts to make a lot of sense. I assume that people who answer this have money and savings. Whoa! But if I assume, well, maybe they know something more than I do. I learned so many techniques while working at the bank of managing money by not assuming I knew more than my customers, by listening to what they did, and I learned a ton. Interesting, right? How do researchers know that those who use credit cards don't have money saved? What about those who cut back on spending don't have money? They don't know that. They're making assumptions. Good studies avoid using passive-aggressive questioning. Open-ended questions usually don't prove anything. They rarely prove a thing. All this does, it tells us how most people would behave with an unexpected expense. It does not prove that they have money in savings. See, but the researchers are afraid of hearing no, so they're not going to ask a question like, do you have money saved for a $1,000 emergency room visit? That's what happens when you're afraid to hear no, right? Just ask the yes or no question. Then you can come to those conclusions. Be careful about the bait and switch. Note how the conclusion in the Bankrate article isn't a finding of the question. The author made another assumption to switch the conclusion of a study. Again, this doesn't prove that people don't have money in savings. And that's not even what the question was asking in the first place. Think about that. Now, and the reason why I point this out is think about the Pew study, right? They're trying to come to one conclusion, but is that what the data are actually saying? I want you to get very good at this, because when you see this mathematically, you can immediately spot the assumption. Journalists aren't going to do the math, because a lot of times they don't know how, right? So you need to be able to be smart enough with the numbers to say, no, that's BS, and here's why that's BS, okay? And then, of course, the sales. Look, selling isn't bad. I get it, you have to make money. But don't lie to sell. Tell the truth, okay? So when we talk about these studies, whether it's Pew, whether it's this Bankrate, always be thinking about, look at the data and ask yourself, do the data prove what the person's saying? Okay? Do the data, or is the person assuming they know more than the people that they're researching? It's humbling to admit that I don't actually know more than the people I research. Right? I told companies a few years ago that we were going to start to see the decline of coast in America. In other words, the East Coast and the West Coast were no longer going to be the centers of wealth, and the wealth was going to be concentrated in the Midwest, because this was an observation I made while working for the bank, and I had a lot of people that were like, well, why are people doing that? And I thought it was a little bizarre that the Midwest was becoming richer while the coast were starting to get poorer. I don't know, but I can't go around thinking that I know more than the people who are doing that. They're clearly moving to the Midwest because they see opportunity, okay? And they're a lot smarter than I am probably before it's all over with. And it's humbling to sit there and say, wow, these people know way more than I do. But I have to report the facts. This is what I was observing, and this is what's actually happening, instead of sitting there and acting like I know more than the people that I'm researching. Okay? And the other thing, too, is if you're ever in a position of research that you need to prove something, just ask the yes and no question. Stop being afraid of hearing the word no and just ask it. Open-ended questions generally prove very few points.